The night Julia shattered our family started like any other, with rosemary chicken simmering on the stove. Keith's math worksheet lay scattered across the kitchen table next to Kaya's favorite bedtime story, waiting for our usual evening routine. My name is Kenneth Miller and I'm 37 years old. After 12 years of marriage and raising 2 children together, I never imagined my wife would choose her high school boyfriend over our family. Julia's nervous energy filled the kitchen as she wiped her hands repeatedly on her apron. "Kenneth, I need to talk," she said, her voice oddly detached. When she mentioned reconnecting with Clark, her first love, my world tilted sideways. The wooden spoon I was holding nearly snapped in my grip. "You're leaving us?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. The next morning came too early, dragging me from a restless sleep while the house was still dark. I stood in the kitchen staring at the empty coffee maker Julia usually set up the night before. The silence felt wrong, like a held breath. By 6:30, I had pancakes ready, the frozen kind Julia would have frowned at. But they'd have to do. Keith stumbled in first, his backpack hanging off one shoulder. He paused at Julia's empty chair but didn't say anything. My heart ached watching him push his food around. Kaya bounced in wearing mismatched socks, her curls wild from sleep. "Where's Mommy?" she asked, climbing onto her booster seat. "She always does my hair for school." The question hung there, heavy as lead. I set down my coffee cup, choosing my words carefully. "Mom chose to take another path right now, but we're still a family, and I'm right here with you both." Keith's fork clattered against his plate. "She's not coming back, is she?" "I don't know, buddy," I answered honestly, "but what I do know is that we're going to be okay. We'll figure this out together." At work, between maintenance calls, I made the phone call I'd been dreading. A colleague had recommended Laura Young, saying she was the best family attorney in the county. Her secretary got me an afternoon appointment. The law office smelled like leather and coffee. Laura Young wasn't what I expected, older than me with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that immediately put me at ease. She listened without interrupting as I laid out the situation, spreading bank statements across her desk. $6,000, I said, pointing to the transfers. Gone in the week before she left. Laura nodded, making notes. "We'll need to document everything from here on out. Every missed call, every skipped visit, every withdrawal. Think of yourself as an archivist, Kenneth. The more detailed your records, the stronger our position." That evening, after the kids were in bed, I cleared space on the living room desk. 3 new binders sat before me, labeled with dates. Inside went printed screenshots of Julia's text promising to leave, bank statements, and a log I'd started of her communications, or lack thereof. The floor creaked behind me. Keith stood there in his pajamas, looking smaller than his 11 years. "Dad, is this going to get better?" I pushed back from the desk and opened my arms. He came over for a hug, something he'd been doing more lately, despite claiming he was too old for it. "It will," I promised, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. "It'll take time, but we'll get through this." My phone buzzed just as I was tucking him back into bed. A text from Julia. "Miss the kids. We'll call them this weekend to catch up." I stared at those words, wondering if she'd follow through, or if this would be another promise she'd break. The kids didn't need more disappointment, but they also deserved to know their mother still cared, if she did. Setting the phone face down, I added her message to the growing paper trail. Whatever happened next, I'd be ready. The Saturday morning sun filtered through our kitchen window, catching dust motes in its beam. Keith stood beside me at the stove, his tongue poking out in concentration as he carefully flipped a pancake. "Did I do it right, Dad?" "Perfect flip, buddy." I squeezed his shoulder, trying not to glance at my silent phone on the counter. Julia's text from Thursday still burned in my memory. "We'll call them this weekend." Kaya hummed as she placed forks on the table, making sure each one lined up exactly with the edge. She'd always been particular about details, just like... I pushed the thought away. "Can we put chocolate chips in the next batch?" she asked, climbing onto her chair. "Sure, sweetie." I reached for my binder, jotting down the time. 9:15 a.m. No contact. The documentation had become second nature already, like breathing or checking the locks at night. Keith's eyes kept drifting to the phone throughout breakfast. I saw him checking it when he thought I wasn't looking, his face falling each time the screen remained dark. By evening, after a day of yard work and board games, Keith finally cracked. He stood in the doorway of my home office, shifting from foot to foot. "Dad? Maybe we should call Mom instead?" My chest tightened. "Buddy, your mom promised to call you. Let's give her the chance to follow through." He nodded, but his shoulders slumped as he walked away. I added another note. 7:45 p.m. Children expressing anxiety over lack of contact. Sunday dragged by without a ring or text. Kaya asked twice if her mom had called while she was playing outside. Each time I had to watch her face fall. When bedtime came, she hugged her stuffed rabbit extra tight. Monday morning, I printed the phone logs before heading to work. No incoming calls from Julia's number. No missed calls. No voicemails. I slipped the papers into my growing file, each empty line another brick in the wall of evidence. Later that week, I met Hannah at our usual coffee spot. My sister's face was tight with concern as I explained the situation. "You can't keep doing double shifts forever, Ken," she said, stirring her coffee. "The kids need stability." "I know." I rubbed my eyes. "But the hospital's been good about scheduling. It's just the emergency calls that are throwing us off." Hannah reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I can help. I'm only 10 minutes away, and you know I adore those kids. We'll work out a routine." "You sure? It might be a lot." "They're family." She cut me off firmly. "We'll make it work. Keith can do homework at my place when you're on call, and Kaya already loves helping me garden." Relief washed over me. Having Hannah in our corner meant everything. One more piece of stability in our shifting world. That night, as I tucked Kaya into bed, she grabbed my sleeve. "Daddy? Can you leave the closet light on?" "Of course, princess." I flicked the switch, watching the soft glow spill across her floor. It was the same light we'd installed years ago when she first got scared of the dark. Julia used to. Back in my office, I opened the binder and made the final entry for the week. First weekend, 0 contact. The words stared back at me, black and damning on the white page. In that moment, I understood. Julia's absence wasn't just hurting our children. With every missed call and empty promise, she was building my case for me, one silent weekend at a time. 3 weeks after Julia walked out, I stood outside the county courthouse, straightening my tie one last time. The morning sun felt too bright for such a heavy day. Laura Young's heels clicked against the marble as she approached, her arms full of meticulously organized binders. "Ready?" she asked, adjusting her grip on our evidence. I nodded, though my stomach churned. As I'll ever be. Inside, the courtroom smelled of wood polish and anxiety. I'd spent countless nights preparing for this moment, documenting every detail of Julia's absence. Now it was time to let those empty spaces speak for themselves. We waited nearly 20 minutes past our scheduled time before Julia finally rushed in, her hair slightly disheveled. Traffic was terrible coming from the city, she announced to no one in particular. The judge's expression remained neutral, but I noticed her making a note. Laura presented our case methodically. First came the bank statements showing the $6,000 Julia had transferred out before leaving. Then the visitation log, a calendar marked with red X's for every missed opportunity to see her children. Phone records showing unanswered calls when Keith and Kaya tried to reach her. Even screenshots of social media posts where she'd checked in at restaurants and clubs while claiming she was too busy to video chat with the kids. "Your Honor," Julia interrupted at one point. "I'm adjusting to a new situation. I promise I'll do better." The judge held up her hand. "Ms. Miller, the court is interested in patterns of behavior, not promises." Laura continued, presenting evidence of my stability. Work schedules showing how I'd arranged coverage for childcare, notes from the kids' teachers about their attendance and homework completion, even receipts from the counseling sessions I'd started taking them to. When the judge delivered her ruling, her words felt like anchors dropping into place. The court finds sufficient evidence to grant temporary primary physical custody to the father, Kenneth Miller, with exclusive use of the marital home. She detailed visitation schedules and support requirements, each point another brick in the wall of stability I was building. After court, I drove straight to pick up Keith and Kaya from school. They climbed into the car, backpacks heavy with homework and questions in their eyes. "Hey, guys," I said, meeting their gazes in the rearview mirror. "I've got some news. We had a meeting with a judge today about making sure things stay stable for us." "What does that mean?" Keith asked, his voice careful. "It means we get to stay in our house just like we are now. You'll keep going to your same schools, sleeping in your own beds. Everything stays steady." Kaya's small voice piped up from the back seat. "Does Mom have to come back?" "No, sweetie, but she can visit you when she follows the rules we set up." That evening, I spread mortgage refinancing paperwork across the kitchen table while the kids worked on their homework. The numbers looked better than I'd hoped. We could manage on my salary with some careful budgeting. "Who wants to celebrate with ice cream sundaes?" I asked once the last paper was signed. Their faces lit up as we gathered around the counter, piling on toppings and whipped cream. For a moment, everything felt almost normal. Then my phone buzzed. An email from Julia. "We need another mediation session. I want to make things fair." My spoon froze halfway to my mouth, ice cream starting to melt. Dawn painted the kitchen in shades of gray as I packed lunches. Turkey sandwiches for Keith, peanut butter and banana for Kaya. The routine was getting smoother, but some mornings the silence felt heavier than others. Remember when making school lunches meant stealing kisses from Julia between sandwich assembly? Now it was just me, the ticking clock, and 2 empty thermoses waiting to be filled. "Keith, 5 minutes." I called up the stairs, checking his math folder one last time. The hospital had approved my overtime request, which meant Hannah would handle afternoon pickup. Thank God for sisters who step up without being asked. Kaya appeared first, dragging her backpack. "Dad, can we have chocolate milk today?" "Already packed, Princess." I'd learned that small victories matter. Sometimes chocolate milk makes the difference between a good morning and a meltdown. The drop-off line at school moved like molasses, but I kept my cool. Being late to work wasn't an option. Overtime meant everything now. My supervisor understood, though. "Family first," he'd said when I explained the situation. "We'll make it work." That evening, Hannah sat at our kitchen table helping Keith with fractions while I made dinner. The rhythm of the knife against the cutting board couldn't quite drown out Keith's voice when he finally spoke up. "Mom used to help me with math," he said quietly. "She made it fun." Hannah's eyes met mine over his head. I set down the knife and pulled up a chair. "It's okay to miss her," I said. "That's normal." The counselor, Dr. Torres, had warned me this would happen. We'd started seeing her weekly, right after Julia left. She specialized in cases like ours, where one parent chose to step away. "They're adjusting," she'd told me during our last session, while Keith and Kaya played with therapeutic sand in the corner. "But consistency is crucial right now. Any promises made need to be kept." Julia wasn't getting that memo. She'd missed 2 more scheduled visits this month. First it was a migraine, then a work emergency. Each time I documented her texts word for word, filed away the screenshots, noted the dates and times. Laura Young had taught me well. Everything was evidence. The boat was the hardest thing to let go. Keith and I had plans to restore it together, but the bills didn't care about dreams. The sale brought in enough to cover 3 months of mortgage payments. Walking past the empty space in the driveway still stung, but Friday nights made up for it. "More syrup?" I asked, watching Keith and Kaya sprawled under their favorite blanket on the couch. The dog, finally settling into regular meals again, dozed at their feet. Pancake nights had become our thing, a small tradition carved out of necessity. Kaya giggled as Keith tried to catch a drip of syrup with his tongue. "Dad, you made them perfect." The sound of their laughter filled the room like sunshine. For a moment, everything felt right. The binders of evidence could wait. The missed visits and drained accounts seemed distant. This was what mattered. 2 kids who could still laugh, a dog who'd found his place again, and pancakes that tasted like home. Then the doorbell rang. My hand froze mid-reach for the syrup bottle. We weren't expecting anyone. Hannah had her own key. The laughter died as quickly as it had come, and I felt the weight of 3 pairs of eyes watching me, 2 children and 1 very alert dog, as I stood up slowly. Through the window, A familiar shadow waited on our front porch. I opened the door slowly, muscles tensed. But instead of Julia, a courier in a crisp uniform stood there, holding out a tablet for my signature. Delivery for Kenneth Miller. The sealed envelope felt heavy in my hands. Inside, formal letterhead announced another mediation date, 3 weeks out. My stomach clenched, but I'd learned to channel anxiety into action. I texted Laura Young immediately. "Just breathe," she advised when we met Monday. "We've documented everything." Let her try to explain 6 months of absence. The days crawled by. I updated my binders, printed fresh phone logs showing Julia's missed calls to the kids, organized bank statements tracking her withdrawals. Keith asked once if his mom would be at his upcoming science fair. I couldn't promise either way. "We'll focus on your project," I said instead. "That's what matters." The morning of mediation, I straightened my tie in the bathroom mirror. Hannah arrived early to watch the kids, bringing donuts and her steady presence. "You've got this," she said, squeezing my shoulder. Laura Young met me outside the building, precise as always with her filing system. We waited in the conference room as minutes ticked past the scheduled start time. 20 minutes late, Julia rushed in, apologizing about traffic. Her lawyer looked tired already. "Ms. Miller," the mediator began, "you're requesting joint physical custody?" "Yes," Julia leaned forward. "I'm their mother. I'm ready now." "Ready?" I couldn't help myself. "Like you were ready for Keith's parent-teacher conference? Or Kaya's dentist appointment?" Laura Young placed a folder on the table. "We've documented 37 missed opportunities for contact in 6 months. Phone calls not returned, visits canceled last minute. The children's counselor notes ongoing adjustment issues related to inconsistent presence." The mediator reviewed everything carefully. "Ms. Miller, your history of follow-through is concerning. The court prioritizes stability." "I had things to work through," Julia protested. "But I'm here now. Being present matters before mediation, not just during it," the mediator said firmly. We left with nothing changed, my custody arrangement still intact. Life settled into familiar rhythms again. Keith made honor roll. Kaya started laughing more at breakfast. Even the dog seemed lighter, chasing squirrels in the backyard like he used to. That Saturday morning felt almost normal. I was flipping pancakes while Keith set the table, Kaya still in her pajamas. The sun streamed through our kitchen window, warming the ordinary peace we'd built. Then headlights swept across the wall. A car door slammed. I reached the front door just as Julia's knuckles hit the wood. When I opened it, she stood there swaying slightly, mascara streaking her cheeks. A single suitcase rested against her leg. "Kenneth," her voice cracked. "Please. What are you doing here?" "Clark left." The words tumbled out. There was someone else. I made a horrible mistake, I know that now." Behind me, I heard Keith and Kaya's footsteps pause in the hallway. Julia's eyes darted past my shoulder. "We can fix this," she pleaded. "I'll do anything. I'm their mother. I love them." I stood silent in the doorway, watching tears track through her makeup. The woman who'd walked out 6 months ago now stood begging on our porch while inside, our children held their breath. I closed the door quietly but firmly, watching Julia's shadow linger on our porch through the frosted glass. Inside, Keith and Kaya stood frozen in the hallway, their faces a mix of confusion and worry. "Come on," I said, guiding them back to the kitchen. "Let's finish breakfast." We ate in silence, the pancakes growing cold. Outside, I heard Julia's car start up and pull away. My hands shook slightly as I cleaned the dishes, remembering the desperation in her eyes. But I'd learned that desperation didn't equal change. It just meant someone had run out of options. The next morning, I was pouring cereal when another knock came. This time it was a courier, holding out a thick envelope with that familiar look of court paperwork. "Emergency motion," I read, my stomach dropping as I scanned the pages. Julia was accusing me of parental alienation, claiming I'd systematically blocked her access to the kids. She wanted immediate joint physical custody and temporary support payments. I called Laura Young before the kids were even dressed. "I can meet you at 11, she said, her voice steady as always. "Bring your documentation." Hannah came over to watch the kids while I drove to Laura's office, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tight. The familiar smell of coffee and paper greeted me as I walked in, carrying my now-worn binders. "This is aggressive," Laura said, spreading the motion across her desk. "But it's also desperate and weak. Look at how she filed it right after showing up at your door." This wasn't about reconciliation. It was setting up for legal action. My throat felt tight. "She's saying I kept the kids from her. And we have 6 months of evidence proving otherwise." Laura pulled out her yellow legal pad. Phone logs showing her missed calls. Visitation schedules she ignored. Bank statements tracking her withdrawals. The counselor's notes about the children's progress in your care. "This motion is theatrical, but it has no substance." I nodded, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "What do? We prepare. Organize everything chronologically. I want every missed visit, every unanswered text, every therapy session documented and ready." That week felt like walking underwater. I sorted papers after the kids went to bed, reliving 6 months of abandonment through timestamps and official records. During dinner one night, Keith pushed his food around his plate before looking up. "Dad?" His voice was small. "Are we going to have to live with Mom?" Kaya's fork clattered against her plate. "No," I said firmly, reaching across to squeeze their hands. "I promise I'm going to fight for you both. We've built something stable here, and I won't let anyone shake that." "But she's our mom," Kaya whispered. "Yes, she is. And that means she should have been here all along, not just when things got hard for her." Later that night, after tucking them in, I sat at my desk reviewing everything one more time. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura Young. "Court date confirmed, next Thursday, 9 a.m. I looked at the binders spread before me, 6 months of evidence proving who'd really been there for my children. Who'd handled homework and doctor's appointments and nightmares. Who'd built a new normal from the ashes of betrayal. "This is where we end her ambush," I whispered, closing the last binder for the night. The morning air felt sharp as I pulled into the courthouse parking lot, 40 minutes early. Laura Young's car was already there, her briefcase visible through the window. I grabbed my binders and stepped out into the cold. "Kenneth!" Julia's voice came from behind me, making my shoulders tense. "We need to talk before this starts." I turned to face her. She looked smaller somehow, her designer outfit hanging loose like she'd lost weight. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Whatever you have to say, save it for inside," I replied, but she stepped closer. "You don't understand," she whispered, glancing around. "I made mistakes, but this isn't fair. They're my children too." "Morning, Kenneth." Laura Young's crisp voice cut through the tension as she approached from her car. "Let's head in early and review our exhibits." Inside courtroom B, we arranged our evidence methodically. Laura spread out 6 months of documented absence, phone logs, bank statements, counselor reports, all organized chronologically. Julia sat across the aisle with her attorney, fidgeting with her phone. When the judge entered, the air seemed to thicken. Laura Young rose smoothly, presenting our case with precision. She walked through each missed visit, every unanswered call, pointing to specific dates and times. The financial records drew the judge's attention. Regular transfers from our joint account to Julia's private card, then from her account to Clark's. "Your Honor," Laura continued, "these transfers to Mr.
Reynolds clearly show coordinated dissipation of marital assets during the separation period." Julia's attorney tried to object, claiming the transfers were gifts, but Laura was ready. She produced ATM camera footage showing Clark using the card linked to our old joint account. The judge's expression hardened as she reviewed the evidence. When Julia took the stand, her story began unraveling.
She couldn't explain the missed visits or account for the money. Her claims about me blocking access fell apart against the documented history of her own absence. "Mrs. Miller," the judge interrupted at one point, "your allegations of alienation are contradicted by your own conduct. These records show consistent opportunity for contact that you failed to utilize." The ruling came down like thunder. I received permanent primary custody. Julia was restricted to supervised visitation until she completed parenting classes and demonstrated 3 months of consistency. The judge ordered her to pay child support and awarded me the majority of marital assets to offset her dissipation of funds. Then came the surprise. The judge authorized civil recovery against Clark for his role in depleting our accounts. I watched his face fall as he was served with papers right there in the courtroom. his usual swagger vanishing. As we filed out, Julia caught up to me in the hallway. Her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "Please. Clark lied to me. He promised we'd build a life. I'm sorry. Give me another chance." I looked at her, really looked at her, and shook my head slowly. "You lost the last one the moment you chose your first love." Weeks slid into a gentle rhythm after the divorce papers were signed. The house felt different, lighter somehow, like we'd finally shed the weight of uncertainty. Every Sunday morning, the kitchen filled with the rich smell of roasting meat and vegetables while Hannah helped Kaya set the table. Those meals became our anchor, a weekly reminder that family doesn't need perfect conditions to grow. "Dad, can we put this in the beach jar?" Keith held up his birthday money from his grandmother, eyes bright with planning. We'd started a mason jar for our first real vacation, sitting prominently on the kitchen counter. Every spare dollar went in, along with their allowance when they chose. It wasn't just about saving money. It was about building something to look forward to together. The changes showed in small ways. Keith brought home his report card one Thursday afternoon, pride barely contained as he handed it to me. Honor roll. He'd worked through everything, the chaos, the adjustment, the anger, and still managed to excel. I hung it on the fridge where Julia's shopping lists used to be. But the biggest victory came quietly one night when I walked past Kaya's room and noticed something missing. The familiar glow of her closet light. She'd fallen asleep on her own, secure enough to face the darkness. I stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her peaceful breathing, remembering all the nights I'd worried she'd carry her mother's absence like a permanent shadow. News traveled in our small town. Clark's swagger had crumbled under the weight of consequences. The civil suit for the marital funds hit him hard. Wage garnishments forced him out of his apartment, and his reputation suffered. Last I heard, he was picking up handyman work, a far cry from the lifestyle he'd promised Julia. Karma had its own timeline. Julia's new life was smaller, too. She rented a room across town, pulled double shifts at a diner, and struggled to maintain her supervised visitation schedule. Each missed visit got documented in my binder, but the entries felt different now, less like ammunition and more like closure. The anger that used to fuel my record-keeping had cooled into something closer to indifference. The text came late one night. "I'm outside. Can we talk?" I walked to the window and saw her car idling in the driveway, headlights off. Through the windshield, I could make out her familiar silhouette, waiting for a response. My eyes drifted to the porch light switch, the same light that had illuminated so many dramatic scenes in our story. From the kitchen, I heard Keith and Kaya laughing over their evening snack, their voices carrying the easy joy of children who finally felt secure. Looking back at the porch light, I reached up and flipped the switch off. In the darkness, I watched Julia's car eventually pull away. Standing in my quiet kitchen, watching my children share the last cookies, I realized something profound. Justice isn't loud. It's this warmth, safety, and the sound of my children free from her chaos. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.